us as living entities, those of us who are true living entities, are primarily made up of anti-material particles, and there's a cultivation of anti-material activities. And through that activity, the material is destroyed or annihilated. So it is through the unseen worlds that the seen or the material shape or the material worlds eventually find their rebirth. It's kind of like thinking, right? You get into a certain mode and a certain quality of thought, and through that mode and quality of thought, you begin to change the outlook and the talent and the personality of your life, and you do this without necessarily first troubling yourself with the materialistic work, but you begin to first trouble yourself with the transcendental, qualities of truth concerning matter, concerning non-matter. And you do that in such a perfect way that maybe eventually you'll be called a disciple, of certain things. And by doing this, you tend not to bother yourself much with the goings on and the current events of the material world, even though you shape it through the non-material, so understanding that our deities belong to the non-material, and there are some who are so talented in their ability to administer and shape things in that particular world, and that they become like the presiding personalities of that world. We call them by different names and things like that, but through scientific discoveries and things like that, people have began to accept, the power of the non-material, if you were, even if they may not call them by certain personalities, or certain names and things like that. There is still a personality of a Godhead that resides as a dominating figure that predetermines, where all living entities will live with that particular entity. It's so interesting, a lot of times people's perception of the Most High, and not realizing that we are made of that stuff of the Most High, making us equal in Most High, but equal with the Most High, but still serving in a subservient role. And that's where the balance and the harmony of that divine truth comes in. We may not necessarily say, well, if I'm made of what you're made of, why can't I be in charge? Why can't I be the boss? And this always seems to be like a partial truth in the assumption that people make when it comes to equality, and equality doesn't necessarily mean, I may have two sticks. I may have two sticks, or a left arm and a right arm, and I may build them in a way where they are equally as strong, but they clearly, if I'm using them in a way where they're each doing something different, just the mere fact that they're each balancing a different side of my own physical, so it's just interesting, just watching and seeing how some people may not realize that the changing modes and the changing realities of nature come through the balancing of the anti-material or the non-material. And even our different zones and attitudes that we step into, passion of that which we consider to be good, that which we consider to be ignorant. These are all of the things that create the changes in nature. Changes in nature are created through goodness, ignorance, and passion. And there's an omnipresence, if you will, at all times of this process of creation and this process of annihilation of that said creation, and even the maintenance of creation. right? Even within our own body temples, there's constant creation of something. There's a constant destruction or annihilation of something. And then there's a homeostasis of maintenance, all happening at the same time. Well, the same thing happens throughout the universe. You see, there's always creation. And some of us may call that good, or we may call that our passions lead us to create. There's annihilation. Sometimes it's good, or sometimes we're annihilated by our ignorance, and there's a maintenance of these particular systems as well, through all the same things, systems that we even consider to be possibly oppressive, right? Those systems would not last if it were not for someone being ignorant, or someone being passionate about their ignorance, right? But all of these things are non-material, and like I said, even though us as living material entities, we're primarily made up of antimatter, we sometimes don't give it the same kind of stress in terms of how that antimatter will make us subjected to even the pains of living, the pains of being birthed, the pains of death. It all comes back to those understandings, and when we realize the transcendence of the anti-material, which is really what so much of our metaphysical study is about, and our ability to leave our physical, corporeal, material bodies, in that moment, we come into a space in which we are surrounded by deities of fire, which have control over the atmosphere, right? Called by different things, angelic energies or the Elohim, but all require that we move out of the council and out of the administration of foolish people who don't really have the ability to see galactic and cosmic management at work. Who seem to think that it's silly that electricity or yom, which is days or times or years or nights or fire, air, water, could be administered by these beings of evolution. But when you come to that space, when you're in alignment, like when I and the Father are one, when you come into that space of, like guru understanding and thinking, you learn how to satisfy the unseen coordinators and managers of all that is material, and how to tap into the goodwill. And I'm not speaking about, offerings and appeasements. It's not the same. Tapping into the goodwill means tapping into the right consciousness. It's like wrestling an angel until it blesses you. That's learning to tap into the consciousness of an administrator. And we begin to assail to higher realms and higher worlds, and we become people who are able to enjoy more comfortable lives for hundreds of thousands of years, even though when we assail to those greater places, we recognize that it's not real. It's not eternal, I should say. If you have a desire to eternal life and to enter into a non-material space and universe through mysticism via certain opportunities that are opened up by what we would call demigods, you usually find yourself stuck on this lower class planet that we call Earth. You have to go through the Christos. You have to go through the Christ energy. You know, where I'm teaching a class right now inside of our New Life Global Ministries.